Hey everybody, Brett from Love Best and the Belfry back for another video and kind of a new horror vlog, or this is just more of a video about Valloween. And if you are, whether you're new or an established fan of this channel, you would know that we celebrate Halloween basically year round, and Valloween is a thing, and now Summerween has come to fruition as of this past year in 2025. I didn't know that Summerween would actually be a thing with merchandise, but that is a thing now. With Valloween coming up on the horizon, I thought I'd just simply show off some movies that you should watch for Valloween. Let's get started. I do have some physical copies. I will just insert a picture of movies that I don't have physically in here. Everyone say hi to Lydia, and she's kind of teasing one that I'm going to talk about. But yeah, let's get started. The first movie on the horizon is one that is called Burying the Ex. I really don't know where this is streaming. I just happen to own a physical copy. I don't take this movie that seriously. I don't think anybody who puts in a movie called Burying the Ex should exactly take it that seriously, because it is supposed to be a horror comedy. It has Anton Yelchin, Alexander Daddario in it. Ashley Greene plays the ex-girlfriend. Surprisingly, way better performances than it needs to be for a movie like this. It was directed by Joe Dante, and a movie like this was like tailor-made for me because Anton Yelchin's a guy who runs a Halloween store that is open year-round. That's kind of amazing, and I wish I could do that. But I don't think that's necessarily the best business decision, but I'll just leave that at that. He tells people good morning when they come in. It's amazing. And then you have Alexander Daddario, who works right near him in her own business. It's like an ice cream shop. Both of them are obsessed with horror, so they're kind of tailor-made for each other. Alexander Daddario's ice cream shop has a bunch of horror themed ice cream flavors, and I think her shop is just called Ice Cream. I mean, that's genius. Ashley Greene plays a very unlikable ex-girlfriend. You can guess what it's about. Anton Yelchin wants to get out of that relationship. He goes to break up with her. She basically dies and then ends up somehow getting resurrected as a zombie. Anton Yelchin's just trying to date Alexander Daddario, and that's your movie. But it's a lot of fun. Some of the humor doesn't exactly hit, but I think if you're just kind of a casual horror fan, it's dumb but fun. So yeah, I mean, compared to some of these others that I'm going to talk about, this is probably the most lighthearted one, I would say, out of all the others that I'm going to talk about. Burying the Ex, it's a fun time. It's one that's just fun to watch around Valentine's Day. Next up is one I have on VHS. I honestly just don't feel like going to grab it right now. Me being lazy, but that is Bride of Frankenstein. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Most of the movie itself is not a Valentine's Day type movie, but I think it is just appropriate based on its subject. The character of the monster, him wanting to have a companion or a bride. I think this is one that you kind of just have to watch it, and especially towards the end kind of fits Frankenstein's monster and the bride. You just kind of think of them as a couple, even though they're very much not a couple. At least in the movie Bride of Frankenstein, she's kind of grossed out or kind of put off by the monster, but to me, it's just, it has a charm to it that I think is if you're gonna watch a horror movie, especially if you want to watch a real classic one, Bride of Frankenstein is definitely the way to go. Speaking of Frankenstein, there's another here that I'm going to mention that Lydia is holding up. She's just holding up that outer shell cover that doesn't make any sense to put on DVDs and Blu-rays, but that is Lisa Frankenstein. This came out in 2024. This is one I would also say kind of like Burying the Ex. It's a flawed movie. It's not an amazing movie, but this is one of those movies that's tailor-made for me. Especially the character of Lisa, she is a total weirdo. She ends up kind of just having this bond with people that aren't alive, basically. Makes her own boyfriend in the form of a Frankenstein's monster. I love that in order to get him to come more alive and not be as a mangled corpse as much anymore, she throws him in a tanning bed. It's pretty funny, and just shocks him, and then all of a sudden he becomes more and more attractive. Yeah, this is a fun movie. It actually surprisingly is a pretty romantic movie. The character of Lisa is somebody I can get behind despite how weird she is, and when you find out her backstory, it's a very brief thing, but you're yeah, I can kind of understand losing your marbles a little bit if that happened to me. So, but this is a fun time. I've watched this a couple times since its release. I went to the movies to see this with my wife, and we've really enjoyed it, and we've watched it once before as well. Lisa as a character is of the time, it being the 80s, so she's into a lot of 80s stuff, a lot of post-punk and and alternative stuff. She mentions The Cure in this movie. And then you have Cole Sprouse as the creature, and he's like this like classic pianist. It's kind of a cool meshing of like those two time periods, and it kind of works. I'm sure some people probably saw this and just didn't think anything of it. They're like, whatever, but I really enjoyed this one. This is definitely a good date movie, I would say, especially if you like spooky stuff. Next up is Bones and All, which came out in 2022. This has Timothée Chalamet in it. Pretty much a vampire flick. Shockingly, a pretty romantic movie. Has a good romance like subplot to this. But it's like two people, just like two lost souls basically on the run. It has been a little while since I've seen it, so I kind of forget all the everything entailed of what happens. But it's just you're following just these two characters around and then just kind of trying to live their life and make the best of their life. And this is one movie that I would say if you're in the mood for something a little more serious, this is probably one to check out. If you want something funny, this is like anything but, like, you know, providing laughs and stuff like that. But and I do remember it having kind of like not so like happy ending. But yeah, Bones and All, I thought was an excellent movie. It does a great job at just being like this indie film that just happens to have like vampirism in it. And that's something about that was like really intriguing to me, and I had a really good time. So if you're in the mood for something a little on the longer side, Bones and All is definitely a good one to check out. Next, we're going to get into some more extreme stuff, at least these next couple. Yeah, it's definitely a little more extreme, and that is The Loved Ones. This is one that is, I think if you have kind of a twisted sense of humor and like your date or significant other likes kind of like weird, like a funny, like what's supposed lovesick type movie that has some extreme stuff in it, you might like this one. I certainly did. I thought it was actually really well done. Some extreme horror to me. It does kind of not necessarily get under my skin, but it's like it does turn me off from like liking a certain movie if it's just a bunch of style over substance. Like I can do extreme horror as long as there is a point to all the extremities in it. To me, The Loved Ones I think does work really well with how extreme it gets. This is about a girl who also a total weirdo, not necessarily like Lisa Frankenstein, because she's just kind of an outcast, but this girl is like unhinged. But she basically likes this boy at school and asks him to prom, and it doesn't go her way. And so what happens, this girl and the guy she asks to prom, it gets pretty interesting. Yeah, this is one of those, like, it's psychological, but it does get pretty extreme at times. It reminds me a little bit of like Misery. Actually, I'm quite surprised I didn't put Misery as one on this list to watch on Valentine's Day, because that is kind of a lovesick, kind of twisted one to watch. I do enjoy The Loved Ones, and actually I haven't watched it for a little while, so I think this is one that I'll probably check out. But yeah, if you have kind of a funny sense of humor or a twisted sense of humor with love and what people consider love, this is one that's kind of an entertaining watch, especially if you can handle some extreme stuff. Next up is also one that is kind of extreme, one that is really slow burn, part like kind of action, horror, and just really brutal, like a lot of brutality in it, and that's Mandy. Nicolas Cage. This is one of his better movies for quite a while. I really enjoyed this one. I didn't know that this movie was going to be like a revenge movie, because the movie was very vague in its explanation, or at least its trailer of what it was going to be. You just saw it and you're like, that looks metal as hell. It looks pretty awesome. Mandy and I think Nicolas Cage's character's name is just Red. They live basically in the middle of nowhere. They just kind of do their own thing. They're very much in love with one another. And the first half of this movie is extremely slow. I love slow burn of movies, and I know that's not everyone's cup of tea. I think if you're like not into like artsy fartsy stuff, you'll probably hate this. If you do end up watching this, I would say the brutality in the second half is definitely worth sitting through the first half. I really love the first half of this movie. It gets very trippy. The colors, I love all like the purples and reds that are throughout this movie. Panos Cosmatos, who did this movie, he did Beyond the Black Rainbow, which also visually, it was just kind of like very meditative, and the first half of Mandy is kind of like that as well. And even when things start getting dark, it still kind of has this meditative feel to it. It's very like tranquil and stuff like that. But then once it hits the second half, with most revenge movies, you kind of expect where that's going. And then you have Nicolas Cage. There is this one part of this movie that like basically became a meme of Nicolas Cage just kind of losing his mind, and that's in this movie. The kills, the action is super cool. The villains are very interesting. There's even these like side characters that aren't like the main villains that are involved. I forget what they're called. It's been a while since I've seen this movie, but those characters are just like, it's like, just think about like if a biker gang like became Cenobites, basically. That was what they were, and they're like summoned to go after Red and such. This whole movie is just, I don't know, it's a very interesting experience if you've never seen it. I would say the first half definitely has this sense of romance, and then you know, Mandy and Red, like their relationship is like felt, and their love for one another is kind of felt throughout the movie, despite all crazy brutal violence that happens in the second half. The very end of the movie, you do feel this sense of like, you know, really love each other and stuff like that. So I love Nick Cage in this movie, though. I mean, he's like, you know, to me, he's the best. No matter what he's in, he makes any movie he's in interesting. So, but this is one of his better movies, despite him being very Nicolas Cage. And I know, like with Long Legs, he like played a legit character for a while in that movie, but there was like one scene where I was like, that's Nicolas Cage that came out there. There's a lot of Nicolas Cage type stuff in this movie, but this movie just takes a lot of risks, and to me, it pays off. You know, whether you don't think so, it keeps this movie interesting. And like, I don't see a whole lot of movies made like this one anymore. And I don't know if Panos Cosmatos has done a movie since this. He kind of should. I love his style of filmmaking and love what he loves to put in movies. That dude needs to make more movies. But yeah, check out Mandy. I would say if you're a artsy fartsy couple, that's definitely the one to check out. All right, coming down to The Wire here. Next one is one of my favorite movies ever, and it is actually a very sweet movie despite being considered a horror movie. This is one I always say, it's like, this, just calling this a horror movie is almost like being a disservice to how good this movie is. But that's let the right one in. Even the novel, I saw this movie, fell in love with it, made me want to read the novel, and I love the novel even more than this, despite how much I loved this. This is a great winter movie on top of being a great movie for Valentine's Day. You have the girl Ellie who moves next door to this kid named Oscar, who is bullied at school a lot and has a lot of anger inside of him, and he wants to basically, just anyone who's done him wrong, he just wants bad things to happen to them. Meanwhile, you have Ellie, who you could probably guess, you know, at this point, you know, but like halfway through the movie, like Oscar finds out something about her, and she has this ability to do these things to people, you know, to those who have done Oscar, wrong. She doesn't really feel like rage or anger inside of her in that way, and she basically does it because she has to. And I think that's a very interesting concept. And at first, like when they meet each other, like they're just kind of like outside this apartment complex where, you know, they're neighbors. They kind of meet each other and act like they don't want to be friends, but then they end up befriending each other, and it ends up being kind of forming a romance. You find out more stuff about Ellie as it goes through the movie. Yeah, it's just a beautiful movie. I mean, despite how like brutal and violent it can get at times, especially the end, I actually love how this movie wraps up. It's funny that this movie wraps up the way this movie wraps up. I don't want to spoil it, but a lot of people really like connected it to, oh, now this means for Oscar that this thing's going to happen to him. And I was like, I feel like I'm like the only person that like didn't feel that way, like watching it. And then even the director and the author of the book were like, that's not what it was supposed to be at all. In fact, I think the author of the novel ended up writing a sequel in a short story version called Let the Old Dreams Die, which I love. Awesome short story and a great sequel to whether it's the movie or the book. He basically is just like, he like basically wrote it to be like, yeah, that wasn't a thing, like that wasn't going to be a thing, but everyone thought that was how this whole thing wrapped up, was like Oscar was going to go on to be that, and that wasn't supposed to be the case. This is an amazing movie. There's no movies quite like this one. But yeah, this says best vampire film ever made. To me, it truly is. I mean, there's been some good vampire movies that have come out in the last couple of years that have definitely given this a run for its money. I mean, Sinners, Nosferatu remake. Those are good ones. I would say this is still above those to me. Yeah, fantastic performances. I know they did the American remake, Let Me In. I think it really didn't know how to capture this in the American version. They kind of dumbed it down a good bit, and in this it's like it's not trying to be like so dark about, especially like shots of things and such. It's like this one is very like matter of fact. Like a lot of it is in the winter time, and it's like it just looks like someone shooting a winter scene outside. And in like Let Me In, it was just like everything just looked like these like dark colors and all these reds and stuff like that. It sounds a lot cooler than it really is. When you Americanize certain like subject material, it has to be so over the top. And this one, it's not so much that. Yeah, it's pretty grounded in its presentation, so I like that about this one a lot. And yeah, I think it kicks the crap out of Let Me In, or whatever. The had like Chloe Grace Moretz in it. One of my favorite movies. Definitely a great one to watch around Valentine's Day with your significant other or your date. I was gonna say, maybe hold off on this one if you're just like having a movie date with someone you don't really know too well. Actually, a good number of these, I would say, kind of hold off on these. I would say Burying the Ex or Lisa Frankenstein are more lighthearted in that nature. I was saving one more for last, and that one is, if you are a horror fan, you pretty much know what my last pick is going to be, and that is the obvious My Bloody Valentine from 1981. Some people really like the remake. I have never seen the remake. I don't think I just haven't had like the urge to like go and watch the remake. The 1981 My Bloody Valentine, I actually didn't even watch until last year. I've always just seen it around, and I just never put it on last year and really enjoyed it. There's a reason why it is called My Bloody Valentine. I mean, based on you have Harry Warden, which could have really been this guy to go on to be a horror icon, but this movie didn't get any sequel. It's quite shocking that this didn't go on to get more sequels. Harry Warden could have been a horror icon, and I'm sure to some horror fans he is. It's this town called Valentine Bluffs, and this is a town like that this whole movie takes place in. I don't think I've ever seen a town be so gung-ho about Valentine's Day in my life. This is a reason why this is a number one pick for people to say you gotta watch My Bloody Valentine around Valentine's Day, because especially decor wise, it's like there's just Valentine's Day stuff all over the place, and it's all throughout the movie. I mean, besides like when they go down into the coal mine, most of the movie it's just like pinks and reds everywhere. I would just say basic plot is there is this guy Harry Warden with several other coal miners that are down in this coal mine, and an explosion happens underground, and it's like this old folk tale that like he had resorted to cannibalism, like, you know, eating the other survivors to help himself stay alive, to get out of it. All of a sudden these murders start happening around Valentine Bluffs, and so most people think Harry Warden is back, because yeah, after he escaped the coal mine like around Valentine's Day, ended up in a psych ward or whatever, and so no one really heard from him since. Yeah, so these murders start happening around Valentine Bluffs again, and so people are kind of connecting it to Harry Warden. I mean, our cast of characters that we meet in My Bloody Valentine are really interesting. For like this being a slasher film, like all of our characters are pretty memorable, and everyone has like a pretty distinct personality and is fleshed out pretty well for a slasher film. I would just say my main complaint about My Bloody Valentine is I would say it's a good movie. I wouldn't say it's the best slasher movie. I think for the time it coming out, it kind of gets a pass because this came out at the same time Halloween 2 came out, and you know, even Halloween 2 didn't have, like, especially to today's standards, like the best, you know, slasher kills and such. It is a little lacking in the kills. At least the version I watched, I think I watched the like R-rated cut, and I think there is an unrated version of this movie out there. Some of the kills are pretty like tame, or at least they kind of cut away a little bit. It reminded me a lot of like Friday the 13th Part 7, where every kill in that movie like kind of cuts away. And so while I love that Friday the 13th film, I'm like, there's just always just this dark cloud over that movie for that reason. Kind of how I feel about My Bloody Valentine, at least kind of the R-rated version I was watching. There were certain kills I was like, man, that would have looked a lot cooler if it showed like the full thing. Maybe I could just have to find the unrated cut out there. Other than that, like, yeah, this movie is extremely enjoyable. It's kind of just the go-to film for Valentine's Day, especially if you're just looking for like a horror horror Valentine's Day movie. I know Heart Eyes came out not too long ago. I never saw that though, so these are ones obviously I've seen, and you know, those that I am recommending here. If someone's like Valentine's Day horror movie, go. It'd be like My Bloody Valentine. There's other good ones fun to watch, obviously, based on this video. That would be the #1 pick. I'm gonna wrap it up there. I know there are probably actually tons of other picks out there that people have, so if you do have your own picks that I did not mention, definitely let me know. I hope you all have enjoyed this video. If you did, I appreciate a thumbs up. It goes a long way. If you love horror, Halloween stuff, do try it. I'm trying to just keep this channel a relatively spooky channel. This channel has gone through a lot of changes in the last number of years. I couldn't ever make up my mind on what I wanted this channel to be. Like, do I want this to be a horror channel, like a vlog channel, everything in between? Relatively do just want to try to keep Halloween or horror related. If you like spooky music, I make that a lot on this channel, and some of my albums are up on this. Actually, I do have an album coming out that'll be out on January 30th, and that is called Ghostland Tales. The best way I can describe it is, if you want something spooky, you want something that I would say it is haunted house vibes or walking around a cemetery in the middle of winter vibes, I would say check out Ghostland Tales. That will be up on all streaming platforms, just under my name, Brett Schleicher. It'll be here on the channel, so if you want to check that out on the channel. Lydia Wolf wants to thank everyone for watching. I'm going to say thank you all for watching, and yeah, I will see you in a future video. Happy Valloween. Bye.